All right. Good evening, everybody. We're doing part two of what I think is going to become a more regular series here. I think we're going to do some tomorrow as well, where we dissect the World War debates, most recent series that have dropped, and we go over from a legal analysis and a debate perspective what arguments are working, what aren't working, and why they're not working, as well as talk about different moderating styles and how they either hamper or accentuate what the debaters are doing in their relative arguments. So we covered earlier today, we covered Vigilante TV versus Octavian, or Octavius, I think it is. And that was a good stream. We had a lot of people out. It was really fun. So welcome everybody here for this. We're going to do Kewl Vic versus Kung Fu Joe. We have Ryan Mullally, aka IE Natural Law, doing the moderating of this one. I think we can definitely see a distinct, I'll comment on this later on, a distinct style of moderation that is different. Well, hang on one second, folks. Perhaps there's something wrong with the tubes on the U's and it's not playing. Let me make sure. Hang on. Hey, somebody put in the chat. Are there any problems in the chat? Can people see what's going on? Hang on. I'll do some troubleshooting here real quick. I know you're here for the production quality. Let's check this out here real quick on the back end. Let's go to the studio. Let's go to the content. Let's go to the live. Let's see the thing. It says it's live. Let's go to the stream. Yeah, it's live. I don't know what's. Hey, Doom Patriot, I see you there. Now I'm on the YouTube side. Hey, people. Now I have reverb in my head. People who can't see it, refresh your window, refresh your screen. If somebody's having any issues, refresh your screen. It's working. If I can make it through, there you go, Doom Patriot. Appreciate you, brother. Hey, if I can make it through 30 minutes of content without boomering something or another, then it wouldn't be my channel. So there you go. All right. So again, so we're going through the debate between Kewl Vic and Kung Fu Joe. We're going to talk about several different things today. So everybody knows the voting on this round is done. I didn't want to do any videos before the voting was done because I don't want any of my analysis of the arguments to influence anybody's votes in the World War debate. So that said, we're going through this. There's nothing on the line. I'm going to critique both arguments from a debating perspective, more or less like what does the prompt say? What good definitions could have been laid out to make the argument more salient and better on each side? Where did they go astray? If the moderation was good or bad, how it helped or didn't help. I think just in contrast to what we did earlier today, we'll see. And also, I don't do any of these live reacts. I've watched each of these debates several times and already have a series of notes and a series of comments for the moderators about the moderator's moderation that I'm using for this. So this is not a live react. I already more or less know what happened. No spoilers for me, maybe spoilers for you. But this was a good debate. And I think without further ado, we'll get into it. And because the moderator in this one is Ryan Mullally, and he's a good friend of mine, and I hope he would say a friend of the channel. I'm a friend of his channel. And I'm going to let him give his intro where he gives his plug, where I skip past the other one. So we'll get going. We'll let Ryan give his intro. We'll get into opening arguments. We'll pause occasionally to talk about the arguments. If there are flaws in argumentation that come up, if there are pieces that were missed, if there are problems in the logic, if there are issues with the interpretation of the resolution, we'll pause and stop that. The whole idea here is to make this kind of, for anyone who wants to be an online debater or who is an online debater and wants to refine their skills, to break down the arguments for the next time they go around or when they see a similar argument, to be able to analyze it and figure out the better way to word it, or how to make it more effectively fit the prompt, or how to jettison the entire thing altogether if it's not working. Not that I need to put my credentials out there, but I've coached debate at the high school and the college level, at nationals and internationals. So I'm good at coaching debate, so I'm doing some critiquing of debate and trying to give coaching advice. That doesn't mean that everyone who was in these debates did not do a good job. Everything I've seen so far has been really good, but there's always room for improvement. And there are some places where streams get crossed. The streams get crossed, and all of a sudden, like, the arguments go to hell in a handbasket in every debate I've seen. And so we're going to talk about that. We'll field all questions at the end of the stream. We'll put a link in the chat for anybody who's out there and wants to talk about this this debate, hopefully, or I suppose anything else, that they can join at the end of the stream. My lovely wife, Dr. Pookie, is moderating us, and she will not pod people down for no reason. She was a little trigger happy the first time she did this, but she's told me she's got it out of her system. So without further ado, let's go. Oh, also, it's at 1.5 speed. I watched it at 1.5 speed. I think it works well. If anybody is like, this is too fast, slow it down a bit, I'm happy to do that. Just put a little comment in the chat, and we'll slow it down if need be.
Greetings, Word War Debate fans, and welcome to the Word War Debate Contender Series. My name's Ryan Mullally. I'm an attorney. I've litigated at every level of the U.S. judicial system, up to and including the U.S. Supreme Court, and I have a YouTube channel called Natural Law with Ryan Mullally. If you know me, it's probably from when I defeated Pisco at the inaugural undercard of the first ever Word War Debate, and I'm very excited to be back for the Thunder 32, the very first round in our verbal debate battle. In this round, 32 contenders are facing off in a Word War Debate tournament, and only 2 make it to the championship round, which will take place live at the next Word War Debate event. Those dates are going to be announced soon, and they'll be added to www.wordwardebate.com. So follow us and stay.
Ryan talks fast, so don't worry about it. When it gets to the actual debaters, it'll be slower. Ryan's a lawyer. He talks fast. It'll be okay.
In the know. Now, on to tonight's debate. Debate number 7 in the Word War Debate Contender Series. I'm going to be the moderator. I'm not debating tonight. I'm going to be fair and just. Candidly, I know both these guys. I think they're going to put on a hell of a show. So with that in mind, just pay attention, guys, to the timing cues. I'm going to let you know when you're coming up to the end of a round. You're going to get 5 minutes opening. I'm going to give you a 1-minute warning when you're getting close to the end of the time. We've gone over the format ahead of time. It's going to be openings, followed by open debate, followed by moderator-led crossfire, followed by open debate, followed by your closings. And I'll remind you of the time controls as we move through. So, gentlemen, get your facts prepared, your definitions outlined, and have a fair and fun verbal discourse. May the best debater win, and remember, a lot is on the line. Only one of you will move on for the chance to be crowned in the next Word War Debate Contender Series. Today's debate prompt is, political party allegiance is illogical.
Okay, so real quick, let's talk about the prompt, okay? Political party allegiance is illogical. This is what we would call, in collegiate debate at least, a fact prompt. We're not arguing about policy outcomes. We're not arguing if political party allegiance is logical or illogical, at least about outcomes. We're saying merely the factual scope of this resolution. Is political party allegiance logical or illogical? That's what I would say if I was coaching a team, the scope of this round is.
Debater number 1, Kewl, believes the prompt to be complete BS. Kewl Vic is a quick-witted YouTuber who covers politics while diving headfirst into internet drama, debate highlights, and culture war chaos. Proudly provocative, meme-fueled, and allergic to groupthink, he thrives on stirring the pot while keeping everything punchy and maximally triggering. Plus, he has some great videos covering my debates, so please check him out. Debater 2, Kung Fu Joe, believes that political party allegiance is illogical. Kung Fu Joe is a Southern California fighting game veteran. His competitive edge was forged in the ruthless arcade scene, where his relentless quest to improve his skills led him to discover Sun Tzu's The Art of War, a book that has sharpened his strategic thinking. Today, he brings that same razor-sharp focus and adaptability to debates. I have a great debate with Kung Fu Joe on my channel, and I assume he's posting it wherever you can find Joe. Please check it out on social. It's good stuff. We are starting with Kung Fu Joe, who's going to open with a 5-minute opening statement. Again, Joe, I'll let you know when you have a minute left. And then we're going to go to Kewl afterwards. I hope you both came prepared and ready to debate. So, Kung Fu Joe, we'll start the clock when you start talking.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'll be arguing the affirmative that political party allegiance is indeed illogical. In today's deeply polarized climate, millions treat allegiance to a major political party as a core part of their identity. They vote straight ticket, reflexively defend their party line, and view politics as pure us versus them. Yet this kind of strong political party allegiance, unwavering loyalty and subscription to one side, is fundamentally illogical. Parties are not coherent philosophies or guardians of eternal truths. They are temporary coalitions of interest groups, donors, politicians, and activists, assembled mainly to win elections and hold power. Allegiance forces people to embrace bundled, often contradictory positions, shaped by short-term expediency rather than evidence or first principles. History proves how inconsistent parties truly are. The Republican Party once abolished slavery under Lincoln and advanced early civil rights, while Southern Democrats defended segregation. By the mid-20th century, alignments flipped. Democrats became champions of civil rights, and many Southern conservatives shifted Republican. Economically, Democrats moved from limited government and states' rights to big federal programs under FDR's New Deal. Republicans later adopted small government, tax-cutting rhetoric in the Reagan era. Similar reversals have occurred on free trade versus protectionism, foreign wars, and regulation. Pledging lasting allegiance to today's platform ignores these constant flips. The two-party duopoly worsens the problem through misaligned incentives. Parties prioritize fundraising, media cycles, and internal loyalty over evidence or long-term public good. Dissenters get purged, conformity gets rewarded. A clever example, pro-Israel lobbies like AIPAC often fund or support candidates from both major parties in presidential and congressional races. This lets special interests maintain influence no matter who wins, weakening voters' genuine choice on foreign policy. Blind party allegiance also breeds destructive tribalism. It triggers motivated reasoning, downplaying your side's flaws while exaggerating the opponent's nuance. Nuance vanishes. You can logically support secure borders with streamlined legal immigration or school choice alongside strong safety nets, but rigid party lines make such combinations toxic and unworkable. Yeah. Even my opponent, Kewl Vic, has highlighted illogical.
The prompt is political party loyalty illogical?
Positions on the left-leaning side and has also analyzed and critiqued irrational thinking on the MAGA and Republican side. This shows that even he recognizes voting the same way or aligning with the same broad movement doesn't mean sharing the same principles or depth of reasoning. If inconsistencies and illogic exist within both coalitions, it powerfully underscores why party allegiance itself is flawed.
So I think on that point, right, we kind of have two different things that are being argued at the same time that might have benefited from being bifurcated in the opening statement, right? We have, are each party's views logically coherent? And there should be a threshold provided, I would think, for what logical coherence is. Okay? I bet you would. But the question is if there are parties who have different views and they flip-flop and they're incoherent within themselves, like the party's logic doesn't have to be coherent to have one's allegiance to it be coherent. For example, if I'm a Republican, I'm not, but if I was a Republican, I'm like, okay, as long as the Republican Party aligns 80-20 with my views, then I'll vote for it. That's logically coherent for me. And what the Republican Party does or flip-flops about itself doesn't have anything to do with my logical coherence of... Right. So the thing about that, though, right, is my supporting a party that is more aligned with my views, 80-20 as opposed to 20-80, right, is not logically incoherent for me to support them. However, it would seem to me logically, even as much as there's logical incoherence within the party, as long as they support the views I support, it would seem for me logically coherent to align with that party. So I think there was a bit of a mishmash here of these two principles. Like everything within the party is topsy-turvy. Republicans voted one way and the Democrats voted the other way. Everything's topsy-turvy within the party. It doesn't quite, it's adjacent to the prompt, but it's not quite there. I would have liked to see a little bit more connection from the get-go. And don't worry, like this is still a very good argument considering where it goes after this.
True intellectual honesty demands independence. Instead of outsourcing your judgment to shifting coalitions, evaluate policies and candidates issue by issue using consistent principles, evidence, trade-offs, and respect for individual rights. Independence promotes adaptability to new facts, reduces bias, and...
So again, like are candidates themselves logically coherent or illogical, or is you understanding the contradictions and choosing them or aligning with them? Oh yeah, this is Kung Fu Joe. This is Kung Fu Joe. Yes, sir.
And enables principled compromise. Parties can occasionally serve as temporary tools for coordination, but strong allegiance trades rigorous thought for tribal comfort. Independent citizens who hold all power structures accountable regardless of label produce healthier discourse and better governance than loyal partisans ever will. And with that, I concede my time.
Strong words, Joe. Great opening statement. Cool, Vic. You are up next. And
so again, real quick, for those who just joined in, right, the issue I think that's going to be, at least the way I would, if I was, again, coaching a debate team, I would look at this prompt, is political party loyalty illogical, as an issue of fact debate. I would not be arguing about possible outcomes or policy consequences of what any party has done or could do. That's really beyond the scope of the prompt. Yeah, Malali's the moderator. Yeah, he is. Absolutely. So the whole point is that this is a fact-based debate. Is political party loyalty illogical? So if we get down the road, when we will see down the road, we get there, is, oh, this political party does this and the people don't agree with it. But the policy outcomes of what any one party good or bad, left or right, up or down, perpetuates is not really linked to the prompt. You can logically support, I would posit, one can logically support a party and it can go completely haywire and be illogical to the way, be not illogical, be adverse to the way that you, to the policies you wanted it to support, but yet your supporting of that party is not in of itself illogical. So I think we get away from that, but we'll let Kewl V give his opening here.
And your 5 minutes starts as soon as you start talking.
All right. Well, before I begin, let me say a big thank you to Word War Debates for allowing us to do this.
This is Kewl V. You can see at the bottom there. This is Kewl V.
This. It's going to be fun. I can't wait. Thank you very much to Ryan for being the moderator of this debate. And also, last but not least, thank you to Kung Fu Joe for being my first opponent, hopefully not my last in this tournament. So the resolution is political party allegiance is illogical. I'm on the negative, so I'm arguing it's actually logical, at least the normal everyday version that most people use. But first, let's define the term so we're clear. Allegiance here means having a general sense of loyalty or attachment to a political party. You treat it as your side, give it a default preference, and feel some identity with it, while still being willing to criticize it or walk away if it goes too far off track. It's not a.
So I do like how he enjoys. I mean, I like Ryan's channel. I like his coverage of the law. Natural law as a concept is kind of ephemeral, I suppose. I don't dislike natural law as a concept. I like Ryan. I like Ryan's channel. But again, like I think Vic's doing a good job here of defining some terms that the affirmative didn't. Oh, sorry. Yeah, my bad. I have to get better at that, I suppose, too. So I think Vic's doing a good job here of defining some terms that Kung Fu Joe didn't define. I would just give good advice to debaters. If you have the affirmative and you want to seize the ground, then you should define any term that could be ambiguous whatsoever at all in your opening. If you don't do it, the neg can seize the ground and you're spending half of the rest of the debate trying to claw your ground back on defining terms. So the fact that Vic is giving an alternate definition of what allegiance is here helps Vic in the debate to some extent, but it also leads to a lot of muddle later on that maybe we didn't have to go through if Joe would define his terms straight up front.
Blood oath or a blind cult following. Illogical means a decision or habit that doesn't make practical sense given how the real world actually works, especially when it wastes time, weakens your influence, or leads to worse outcomes than the smarter alternative. With those definitions, here's why moderate party allegiance is logical. You can't research every candidate and every single issue in depth. Okay,
again, here's the problem straight off the bat, right? Is okay, we're going to define this fact proposition and we're going to define some terms, and then we're only going to talk about, in Vic's opening, we're only going to talk about negative practical outcomes, only like consequentialist outcomes. So if you don't do this, here's all the bad stuff that could happen or why it's impractical on an individual level, which is not wrong. Like all of this thing he's saying about why it's impractical on an individual level to not have a two-party system or not have party allegiance is fine, but it's very far. It's far afield from the prompt itself.
Life's too short. Picking a party as your default bundle is a smart time-saving shortcut that still gets you pretty good results most of the time.
It can be smart and gets good results. Doesn't mean it's logical or illogical on its face. It doesn't touch that.
Teams and factions form whether we want them to or not. Just look at MAGA inside the Republican Party. Pretending you're some pure independent who evaluates everything case by case every single election sounds nice in theory, but in practice it leaves you with less power and coordination. Having some real allegiance to your side gives ordinary voters actual.
And yes, in practice and in theory, this is absolutely true.
Leverage. Sure, I usually vote for this party because it mostly aligns with me is fine, but adding a moderate level of allegiance makes the whole thing work better. It keeps the party more stable, forces politicians to care about keeping the base happy, and turns your support into something more reliable than pure cold transactional voting. Pure, I'll only back them while they're perfect.
I mean, that's like literally what it means to be human. I think like part of the definition of what it means to be a human and be a conscious individual is to be able to hold paradoxes and possible even contradictions in there at the same time. Like, yeah, I just think that's part of it. I'll drop a link at the end if you want to talk. Keep commenting, Mickey Rufus. Please keep going, dear Admiral. But if you want to have a deeper dive on this, because this kind of matters as it goes on, I'll put a link at the end of it if you want to hop up and talk. Yeah. I knew you meant true.
Right now makes everything fragile and short term. Allegiance isn't a forever marriage contract. You can still call out your party, push for primaries, or switch when it really drifts. That flexibility is built in. The alternative, zero team, zero attachment, judging every race completely from scratch, might feel more rational on paper, but in the real world, it just drains more mental energy and gives you less influence for the same or worse results. So yeah, conditional party allegiance, this is generally my side, but I'm not stupid about it, kind is logical. It matches how humans actually operate and how big democracies get things done. And with that, I'll yield the rest of my time.
Two great opening statements in the books. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, we're going to cut to a quick video from our sponsor.
I'm not going to cut to the sponsor because it's not my sponsor. So good luck. All right. We'll come back in. So on the one side we have is so far, Vic is arguing like pragmatic results as far as I can see. It gets hashed out a bit later. But being like, oh, having party allegiances is a logical shortcut. So you don't have to actually have every individual voter review every ballot and every candidate and every issue that every candidate is voting for. So it's a shortcut. So it makes it easier for a person to vote. I mean, that probably is true. I think on the whole, it is true. But what that has to do with whether or not the political party loyalty is illogical or not, so whether something is expedient does not make it logical. Whether something is not expedient does not make it illogical. So I think I would say in Vic's opening, he misses the point to some extent. I think also to some extent, Joe misses the point or misses the prompt. But Joe, at least at this point in the debate, is closer to it at this point in time. We'll see how it goes. And Ryan does a great job of moderating after this open discourse here and brings it back in, which is what a moderator should do. A moderator should try to get people to define their terms better, to get people back to the resolution and to clarify what their arguments are, not make arguments on their own, not make random statements, not push pet political theories or pet philosophical or quasi-philosophical theories out there and have people respond to them. Ryan does a good job on this later on. So I think Ryan does a great job of proper moderating. But we'll see what they do in the open dialogue now.
All right, we are back. Now it's time for the open debate. You guys are going to have 15 minutes to go back and forth. I'm going to try to step in only if there's a need for moderation, but to the extent that you are able to moderate your own conversation, I'm going to leave it largely to you. I would encourage you to define your terms and go for clarity early on. It does tend to make things easier, but of course, debate is an art, not a science, and I leave the strategy and tactics to you gentlemen. So
you can hear Ryan's kind of like, please, God, define your term. I mean, in the most moderative, like not controlling way possible. He's like, you might want to all go define your terms like now.
with that in mind, I'm going to put 15 minutes on the clock. I'm going to give you a 5-minute and a 1-minute warning. Otherwise, I'm going to close my mouth unless some moderation is called for. Gentlemen, the debate floor is yours.
Okay, Vic, I picked up on a couple things within your opening there. You basically said like, well, it's not a big deal because if I join a party, I can just leave. Well, then what would be the point of joining the party anyway?
Because it's something that's more like it lasts a lot longer. Like it's more, you know, when you have individual candidates, it could be really like short term. So for instance, let's take a look at Trump, right? He only has 2 terms. And then once he's gone, well, then people that maybe joined the Republican Party for Trump, well, who are they going to support next? I mean, I know me personally, I'm kind of stuck here because I'm just going to have to, I guess, maybe go for the next best candidate. But if you're not stuck with the party, but if you are a part of a party and have allegiance to it, it might be a little easier to actually last like the test of time, I guess.
Again, like I like Joe's question here. Again, Vic's arguing like a pragmatic response, like, oh, it's more beneficial or it's more expedient to keep on the party because maybe the candidate won't last. Well, that's fine, but that does not make the party loyalty logical or logical in and of itself, right? The fact that it does good outcomes doesn't make it logical without some further proof as to why being loyal to the party is logical. The fact I like good outcomes, well, then if the Democratic Party or the Green Party or any party or no party is going to give you better outcomes, then you have no party loyalty, which kind of is an internal critique that's never run, but could have been run at this point, I think. And so for everybody who's listening who's not familiar, an internal critique is you assume the point of view and the argument of, I don't blame you. Hopefully he's alive. Even if he's not, still write him in. But you assume the position and the argument of your opponent, and then you run the logic of that argument. And if there's a contradiction in there, you've won the internal critique. So, for example, if I were to have assumed, if I was Joe and assumed Vic's argument in an internal critique posture, I would say, so the only reason we have these parties is for longevity. So how is longevity logical? How does me being part of this party for my expedience make it logical that I align with this party? How does my allegiance therefore follow that logically from to produce the goal of longevity? It's a consequentialist idea, right? Oh, really? Oh, good. Good for Ron. Going strong at like 99 or 98.
Is how I would put it.
Well, in a way, you kind of are stuck, aren't you? Because like if you support the dynamic that it kind of allows it to go on, then naturally, who's the other choice? It's the Democrats. So I mean, are you ever going to vote for a Democrat during your lifetime? Could you see that being possible?
And the thing that Joe kind of steps in here is like at that point in time, like he's arguing for a bifurcation of parties. Joe's trying to get Vic to admit here that somehow the fact that he's aligned to the Republican Party is just opposed to the Democrat Party, which seems to back Vic's point up that it is logical to align with a party that aligns with your views.
It would really depend. Like nothing is like absolute. So if the Democrats ever stop being just horrible, or if the Republicans become even worse, then yeah, I might vote for a Democrat in that case. As of right now, I don't see that happening. And it's because my values align more with the Republicans than the Democrats. The Democrats, I don't align with them like little to none at all, if anything. So
notice how you said more with, you align more with, which means you're obviously taking some compromises, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So what would be, so in essence, that would prove that it's kind of illogical. Just
I don't think, and this is the point that I kind of fell off with Joe at this point in the debate, is how is taking a compromise, how is taking 80% over 20% illogical? Like, yeah, so the Republicans, say I disagree with the Republicans on 20% of all their policies, and I agree with them on 80% of all their policies, and it's a flip-flop for the Democrats. How is the fact that Republicans are in unalignment with me on 20% of their policies make it illogical for me to have allegiance to them as opposed to Democrats? Like choosing 80 over 20% seems logical to me on its face. So I don't get this line of questioning, Joe.
The support of the party system, basically, right? Like that it in principle is illogical because you're compromising on principle, you're compromising on reason, and sometimes it does just turn into an us versus them, and you just got.
So I think if Joe could have ran an internal critique at this point and said, so if you were opposed to 60% or even 51%, but 60% of Republican policies and in favor of 40% of Republican policies, would it be illogical for you to be aligned with the Republican Party? And if Vic said yes, then Joe's got him an internal critique. But because the whole argument here is because Republicans are inconsistent on some policies and Vic doesn't align with them all the way, that somehow proves the point that it's illogical. I don't think so. I think it's logically sound, at least, to support the party that most aligns with your views.
Toe the party line, even if it gets across the finish line, things that you don't really necessarily want, right? So it's kind of like how, do you remember that bill that the Democrats kept, complaining about, like the border bill? Oh, Trump could have fixed the border if he had only accepted this bill, right? But they Trojan horsed a bunch of stuff in there, right? How, a candidate running for a political party is no different, right? Like if you got to, vote for the guy who is going to Trojan horse in, no doubtedly.
Well, it is fundamentally different because if you're voting for a guy who promises you to do the things you want and you're aligned with those things more than you're disaligned with those things, it's different than voting in a piece of law that would do a bunch of stuff you don't want to have happen. So they are different in kind because one is putting your vote behind a person who's saying they're going to do good things and might do bad things. And one is like one is those candidates voting for a bill that has stuff you don't want and stuff you could kind of want. So it is kind of different in kind, but
something you don't like. So I think even though choosing individuals and choosing, them based on the policies they're supporting, we kind of do that anyway. So why not just be more rigorous about it, right? And it kind of defeats the purpose of even having any logical coherence to the idea of party allegiance.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Is you're going to run into these same human beings were like tribalistic by nature, and if we just go by an individual basis, we're going to run into these same issues. There's no person on earth who someone agrees with everything. So even if we just run it by individuals, you're not going to agree with everything that individual wants, And so in the end, even if there's two individuals, they don't really have any parties. You're still going to have to choose whichever one.
Exactly. Well put. Well put, Admiral. Well put.
You still align with more. You're going to be getting the same thing. But like I said, it's like when you have the parties withstand the test of time. Like they go on much longer than an individual does. An individual's lifetime is very short compared to.
I really just fundamentally don't get this test of time argument. I don't see how it's relevant to the topic about whether one should owe allegiance to a political party. I don't see how the pragmatic argument of it standing the test of time, which it may or may not, which doesn't really matter, is relevant or impactful for the debate.
The two parties.
That's part of the problem, though, isn't it? It's part of the problem because we support that dynamic. But it doesn't, just because we support that dynamic doesn't mean it's not illogical to support. right? A party is going to remain in power no matter if you say, oh, well, F you, they betrayed me. There's a lot of MAGA folks right now who think that Trump betrayed them, right? I'm sure you covered some of that.
And so was it illogical for them to align with the Republican Party when they voted for him, or even align with the Republican Party, even though not MAGA now? I don't think we ever get there logically.
So that's just kind of evidence of it right there. You could walk away from the party, but the party's going to remain in power because we support this illogical groupthink. Wouldn't you rather have a better outcome where we vote on individuals based on what they believe and whoever?
So here it comes out. I think Joe's actual argument here, which is not a wrong argument, is that the two-party system and party groupthink is de facto illogical because of a lot of reasons he'll go into shortly. But I don't think that quite hits the prompt.
Can utilize logic and reason. I believe logic and reason is universal, and that can appeal to the majority of people, right? So I don't think we need to prepackage them in a political party in order to get people to select the best choice, the most reasonable and logical choices.
Right. So there's a different thing is the choice of a candidate logical or reasonable, and is a loyalty to a political party logical or reasonable? So for example, if I'm a Democrat and I align with Democrats on 80% of issues, I'm unaligned with them on 20% of issues. And there's a specific candidate that is way over, like John Fetterman, let's say, right? He is way over the line by being way too conservative and way too Republican and way too anti the values I support as a Democrat. That doesn't mean that my allegiance to the Democratic Party shifts at all. That means I might not vote for John Fetterman if I'm in Pennsylvania. So these correlates are not actually mapping onto each other.
But it also keeps things a little bit more simpler, right? If we just relied on individuals, we would have to take time to research everything that they're for. We'd have to go look in their personal history. It would just be, it would be a lot more difficult to where if you have the two parties, you kind of know what you're getting from each party. It would be the equivalent of, can't this fast food restaurant just serve whatever food on whatever given day? Or would you rather have, let's say, McDonald's, where at least if you go to any McDonald's,
hey, Everest, how you doing, brother?
You're gonna know what you get when you go there. Where if you just go to some place and it's not consistent, or it changes from week to week or year to year or day by day, you're not gonna know what you're getting, and it's much easier for a person to make decisions on what they want to go eat if it's in that system. It's the same thing like with the party system.
The same thing about that, though, right? Is that, hey, fair enough. Nothing wrong with that. But the whole idea that if you vote for a party, you know what you're getting, so it makes it a shortcut and easier for people to do that. Good for you. So if the idea of a political party is like McDonald's because you know what you're getting more or less when you go to it, that doesn't mean it's logical or illogical to support it, right? The idea that there is, is Vigilant? Sorry. Yeah. There you go. Hey, welcome, guys. Welcome all. The whole idea that because you know what you're getting when you're voting for a political party means that makes it logical or illogical is really non sequitur.
You're kind of already know what you're getting from each party. It makes it simpler for the voters.
Right. Well, again, just because something is pragmatic.
And again, the idea and Joe hits it here, because something is pragmatic, first of all, has nothing to do with the prompt, which is like a fact resolution. Is a political party loyalty illogical or is it logical is really the question here, right? Whether or not it's expedient, whether or not it's pragmatic, whether or not it produces good consequences to have political loyalty or makes it easier on voters to have political loyalty, that doesn't really matter to the prompt. We're saying, is it logical or illogical? And that's the level of analysis we need to be at, and we're not getting it yet.
Pragmatic or simple doesn't make it the logically coherent choice.
But isn't it more logical to go what's more optimal?
It's not more optimal in principle.
Because again, optimality is not a criterion for evaluating this debate.
Because like I said, you have to take all these compromises. A lot of us have to take compromises. And it also doesn't really make a lot of sense when the game is kind of rigged, right? Like if what I said in my opening, AIPAC has supported both sides of races. And that, where does that leave choice, right? If voting doesn't work, what is your actual choice that you're engaging in? It doesn't seem like you really are. So this dynamic not only makes you kind of compromise on a lot of your principles, but it also provides an illusion of choice rather than genuine choice.
But the whole point is, what is the more logical outcome? If I'm using logic and I have an 80% potential positive outcome against a 20% negative outcome, I get to choose. It's logical or illogical to choose the 80% likelihood of positive about the positive outcome. That's what they allow, but it's not a shortcut. It's logical, right? Logicity, I like that, is based primarily on the fundamentals of logic. I don't get why utilitarian arguments. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I was saying. The prompt calls for a logical out. What is more logical, right? So whether or not it's Trump or Hitler or the Austrian painter or Darth Vader or who the F ever, right? It doesn't matter what the outcome produces. Is what was it logical to abide by that party principles in the beginning, right? There we go, right?
Well, what do you mean when you said, because a little while ago you said voting doesn't work, but what did you mean by that?
Well, I'm saying, like, if you have a special interest group, right? Like, if
Whether, and now we're going to, I highly doubt there's going to be any debate that I review. I'm going to review them all, by the way, where the Jews and Israel don't enter into it. So welcome to the Israel portion of the debate, folks.
you got pro-Israel interest groups embedded in both sides, in both parties, and their guy wins no matter who wins the election, right? Then where's the real choice there?
Okay. I guess those are things where I could say, like, those are maybe like flaws in the system that maybe we could like rectify or
Flaws
something.
in the system that I'm pointing out. That's why it's illogical.
But he's not defending the system. He's defending whether or not being loyal to a political party is logical or illogical. So now we get into a whole diatribe. Just stand by, folks. It's about Israel and about the corruption of foreign interests in our election system, which is not even close to the prompt.
Right?
Yeah, but wouldn't that be throwing out like the baby with the bathwater? Because you would have to demonstrate why individuals would be better than like a party.
Well, tell me what's the baby?
Individuals,
right? You're saying throwing out the baby with the bathwater. What would be the baby in this example?
I guess the two-party system, I guess.
Right. Well, but that's the thing in question. It is you're agreeing on a flaw. It's a flaw in the system, and that is the system, the two-party system, right? So it's illogically flawed.
It's illogically flawed. I think he misspoke there. No, the fact there is a flaw in the system does not mean your allegiance to a party in the system is logically flawed. That does not follow. There's like 3 circles here in the syllogism, and none of them are touching anywhere. But none of Vic's circles are touching anything because he's arguing consequentialist arguments.
Well, you're just granting it that the whole system is just one big flaw. Therefore,
so what? As flawed as it may be, is one's loyalty to a party that's part of the system logical or illogical to them?
Or we have to throw it out is the thing, I guess.
Not throw it out. The debate is whether or not it's logical. So what we do pragmatic.
Whether or not what is logical. So he goes back to the pragmatic argument here. I give Kung Fu Joe great props for this. He's trying to bring it back to the topic, actually, but it's done in kind of a weird way.
Is a whole different topic, right? We're just looking at a top-down internal critique of whether or not it's logical to subscribe to the two-party system at all.
I would love to actually have it been an internal critique. I don't know what a top-down as opposed to a bottom-up internal critique is, but to make it an internal critique, you have to assume Vic's position and then show how it's logically inconsistent. I think you're doing a very good critique, Joe, of the two-party system, but you're not doing an internal critique of party loyalty being logical. I think calling it internal critique is kind of not accurate at this point.
There is a third choice, right? The third choice is you're independent. It would make a lot more sense.
So now it's an external, pragmatic, internal, top-down critique. Okay.
If everybody was independent, that way, even if there were two parties, they actually have to fight harder for your vote instead of you just kind of preemptively giving it to them, right? You got these slogans like vote blue no matter who. You're familiar with that one, I'm sure, right? Or better red than dead or something. These are slogans designed to flip the switch in your brain to off. You don't have to think anymore. Just vote blue no matter who. Is that a system that is logically coherent?
Yeah, so I don't deny that.
I mean, the system is logically coherent because the parties want people to vote for blue no matter who, or red, better red than dead. And so it's logically coherent that people would spam the internet and spam the media marketing with those arguments. But the question we're asking is whether or not one's allegiance to a party, regardless of any external influence, is itself illogical or logical.
5 minutes, gentlemen.
I don't deny that it can be illogical. Like there are people who just, no matter what, are going to vote for their side, no matter what, and they're willing to compromise those principles. I see that a lot in the Democrat Party, where it's pretty much like,
well, what principles though? We never define those.
Like every principle they claim to have, they kind of throw it out if it means eliminating the opposition. So I think it can be illogical, but I don't think it necessarily is illogical. You know, it's not always illogical. Like I said, when you just leave it to individuals, human beings, again, like you're going to have, you know, they only have 2 limits tops. You know, they only have 8 years tops. So imagine every 8 years or so, a different person comes along.
Again, that goes back to a pragmatic argument. Like the fact that people can only be there for 2 years or 4 years, the longevity of the party has nothing to do with the prompt or what he's trying to defend here. I don't know why. that like, oh, don't, even if it's bad, it'll go away in 4 years or 8 years or 6 years. Doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not the allegiance to the party was logical in the first place.
And just changes it up every like 8 years or so. It would be absolute like
the individual. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it, right? The individual doesn't have the party doesn't have the power to change the party, right? And as a matter of fact, in the last maybe 10 years of watching Trump in action, I would say the party has changed him. He came into.
But so what? If you were a Republican before Trump and you voted for Trump and then Trump did bad stuff, is the Republican Party as a whole still aligned more than not with your values? If it is, then your allegiance to it is not illogical by definition.
Politics condemning the Democrats for endless war and a lot of the things that he kind of did an about face on. There's a lot of angry, ex-MAGA people who say that, no, Trump didn't actually carry his individualism through. It didn't craft the party like completely. He ended up towing the party line, which was, whoever's in there paying for your support is going to get it. The Adelsons supported Trump like massively, and that's why we have so
Israel again. Here we go.
much, Trump embedded in foreign interests, and he looks unidentical to his 2015 self, right? So no, I think parties corrupt individualism.
Why is individualism an issue in the debate? I don't know where that came up actually.
I think personally, probably politics in general corrupts people, because I think even on an individual level, you're going to be getting these same things. But going back to Trump real quick, though, if that were true,
Why go back to Trump? It's not relevant to the prompt. Don't do it, Vic. You did it.
then he would be having a lot more Republican support, and we're not just seeing that he can't pass anything. Didn't they just vote against the SAVE Act? We have control of the House and the Senate, and he hasn't been able to really pass much because he's still getting opposition from within the party.
Right. So what does that do?
Why does that matter? If you are logically aligned with passing the SAVE Act and you are logically aligned with the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is not doing the things you are wanting it to do, is logical for you to leave that party and align with a separate party. That's still a logical decision.
That hurts. Maybe let's say people like us who are more right-leaning Christians, right? If he ends up going against our interests and we're voting for him, but the other choice is an even worse party, I mean, it kind of makes you want to just not.
Sure, but if you admit that, so we could do an internal critique of Kung Fu Joe's position then. If you admit that the other choice is logically a worse party, then it's logical for you to align with the party that's the less worse choice. That is logical on its face. Maybe not the best system, but nobody's arguing for a system or even a party system. We're arguing whether or not party loyalty is logical or illogical.
Engage with the system altogether. It makes the system unworkable. It makes it seem like voting doesn't even work when you're engaging in a two-party system, especially when you have special interests with their tentacles in both sides.
Yeah, I understand it could be disheartening, but I guess it just all really depends, though. It all really depends, because you say that as if Trump has completely accomplished nothing. Like, he was still able to get immigration down to, what was it, net zero? Like, he was still.
Again, like Vic, like, why does what Trump is able to do matter here? We're talking about whether or not aligning with a political party is logical or illogical on its face. Whether Trump did great things or horrible things, it does not matter to the prompt, Vic.
Able to do that.
It's not about Trump and his individual accomplishments. It's about, did he betray voter interest or not? And
it's also not about whether or not he betrayed voter interest or not. It's about whether or not aligning with the party ideology is logical or illogical. The consequentialist outcomes you're arguing for do not matter to the prompt.
Around, a lot of the voices say yes.
Okay, well, what issues are you talking about that he betrayed?
I mean, he kind of just jumped along to whatever Israel wanted at the time.
I would have loved Joe to have not bitten into this whole thing and talked about what happened with Trump and Israel and everything else, and to go back to the prompt about the logical nature of or illogical nature of party affiliation.
Kind of our allegiance to Israel hasn't changed, since Trump or before Trump. It's kind of like just been towing the party line on Israel. If it's got
1 minute, boys.
If they have a dominant Israel lobby, it's not going to be surprising to see Trump, toe that party line. That's just how it is. Bought and paid for on both sides. It doesn't seem to make logical sense. There is a third part. There's another choice, right? The other choice is.
Maybe there's a reason for that, Doomer. Maybe there's a reason for that.
You could have people up there kind of like a buffet, maybe, and you could pick each one, based on their principles. But picking a party is a prepackaged deal, and we all know we make compromises. And with picking individuals, I think we would make less compromises.
I just don't see how these issues would go away if it was left up to individuals. Like, what would stop Israel or AIPAC from paying off either both or one of the individuals? And let's say you have two individuals, right? And one of them is like, yeah, I'm going to get immigration down, no censorship, blah blah blah. But I'm still going to
finish your thought.
I'm still gonna fight with Israel or whatever. And then you have another candidate that's like, oh, screw Israel. However, they're pro lockdowns, they're pro shutting off her speech and letting millions of immigrants come in.
All right, boys, we're going to call time there.
Right.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much for the open debate section. We're going to get ready for the crossfire round, which is where.
So I really want y'all to pay attention, y'all who are still listening, right? To see how Ryan actually brings everything back as a moderator. It's very stark contrast to what we saw earlier today in my stream in Vigi versus Octavian's debate. Is watch how he brings everybody back to the prompt. Watch how he asks them to define their terms. Watch how he tries to get them back on track to talking about what they're supposed to be talking about. This is a pretty damn good job of moderating.
I can make sure you finish the debate strong. I'm going to ask you some questions to clarify terms and your positions, and then that's going to lead back into the final open debate section. Do you guys have any
And that is the limit of what a moderator should do, and he's going to do it.
questions about the format, the crossfire round, or where we are in the debate?
I'm good.
No.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to start the crossfire round in a moment, but first, we're going to be right back after we take a commercial break.
Sorry, I'm not sponsored by them yet. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Just joking. All right, here we go.
Rolling. In this section, I'm going to ask some clarifying questions, and we're going to make sure the semantics are clarified and that the positions are clarified as well.
About semantics.
So let's put 10 minutes on the clock, which for a change of pace, we'll start when I start asking questions. And Joe, I'm going to direct the first question to you, but I want both of you guys to take a shot at both questions. I'm directing this one to you because you're in the affirmative, and I think it makes more sense to start with you in that regard.
It's also very good as a moderator to allow both of the opponents to answer the question. That's something we didn't see earlier either. There were specific questions tailored for specific individuals, and the other person couldn't respond until the moderator retailed the question and asked a different question to the other combatant or opponent, whatever.
So, Joe, the debate prompt here is that it revolves around political party allegiance being illogical. In that context, what does it mean for allegiance to be logical or illogical?
Well, it depends on what you're aligning with, right? If you're aligning with your core principles, logic, and moral values, I think that's a legitimate alignment. But if you're aligning with a party that has a bunch of pre-packaged prescriptions, some of which you absolutely don't agree with, but you kind of just begrudgingly go with anyway, I think that would be kind of an illogical alignment.
Again, like that definition is problematic. If we don't have a good definition of logical or illogical because we're using logic in the definition, right? Is it, and I'll ask this to the chat, maybe somebody hit me up and disagree with me, is if something is 80% good for me and 20% bad for me, is it logical for me to align with the thing that's 80% good for me and 20% bad for me, even though it's 20% bad for me? Or is it more logical for me to align with the thing that's 20% good for me and 80% bad for me? Like, which of those is more logical? Want to see something in the chat and response? I think the point's made, but yeah.
And cool. What do you think? What do you think political party allegiance being logical or illogical means?
I just think, us as humans, like under human nature, I think it's actually more logical, seeing as how we operate, that we do have a two-party system, because just because it's just going to lead to that anyway. I think if we were to abolish a two-party system right now, I think eventually it'll just come back anyway. They'll probably be different parties. They might stand for different values, but
this answer has nothing to do with the question whatsoever.
Probably end up back with a two-party system anyway. So I think it's just logical that we have it, because that's just how we are as humans.
Well, you read.
So it's logical to have a two-party system because we'll end up there anyways. So hocus pocus, two-party system. But the prompt is not about the two-party system at all.
My mind for my next question, and I think I'll reverse the order since you read my mind. You guys have both, to your credit, had said that there were some flaws with the two-party system. I don't think anyone was hiding the ball about that. But cool, you were just talking about why you think we have a two-party system, despite those flaws. Why do you think we have a two-party system?
So admittedly, I didn't.
So even though this is a question that Vic and then Joe can't answer, Ryan's not wrong to bring it up because something they're both talking about. Like when both debaters bring up something, it's fair game for the moderator to ask them about that and ask them to clarify what they mean by that, as opposed to putting out their pet ideas like we saw earlier today. So I just think, like, even though we're both going to say, oh, shoot, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, shoot, me neither. Like, it's a fair question to ask because that was like the majority of the first debate, the first portion of the debate was about the two-party system and its flaws. So this is a good question to try to nail them down and see what they actually think about it, because neither of them defined what they meant by this previously.
And this is something where I should have done more research. So I should have researched why we have a two-party system, and I didn't. So I I don't know why. Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know how it started. My assumption is just that because I don't think we had two parties to begin with. I think the founding fathers tried to get away from that, but then we ended up with it anyway. So I know we had the Democrats first, and then we had the Republicans to fight against it. That's what I think happened. I think that's why we have a two-party system now.
Yeah, Joe, swinging to you, since you've said it's illogical to have a two-party system, why do we have one?
So we had Federalists and Whigs first, and then we had Democratic Republicans to fight the Federalists. And then after the Federalists fell out of power, we had a split between the Democrats and the Democratic Republicans into Democrats and Republicans. So that's the actual evolution for anybody who's keeping score.
Just off the, I didn't likewise, I didn't do any kind of research on that particular topic, but I think just from my brief summation of history, I think it began with many, and then it kind of collectivized into two, each one kind of supporting the most popular groupthink on what we could perceive to be two sides of a political aisle. But then they kind of become each their own Frankenstein monster, and special interest groups and whatnot will just kind of cling on to these things and hijack them, right? So they might have arose organically, but once they get big enough, they're going to be they're going to be targets for predators who are deeply embedded in special interest, and they are very powerful with lots of money.
So, Joe, obviously you guys both have skin in the game as you both have your own sides of the prompt, but, gun to your head, maximum honesty, what are the pros and cons of, a two-party system with political allegiance in America?
Well, I think I listed out a lot of the cons in the debate in my opening.
So what Ryan's trying to do here in so many words is to get each of them to steelman their opponent's argument as it's come out so far, which is difficult because both of them, his arguments have been all over the place. But that question Ryan's bringing out is to try to get each of them to steelman their opponent's argument.
What are the pros? Logically, I can't see any, because there's two ways to view this question, right? The way I'm looking at it is a top-down internal critique of the system itself. So within
okay, but you can't. Okay, so to track back a second, right? An internal critique has to assume Vic's position, and using Vic's position's logical internalities, critique it. Critiquing the system the prompt is based upon is not, by definition, an internal critique. If Joe were to go to Vic's position and say, okay, I will admit for the sake of this critique that political party loyalty is logical, and then show an internal contradiction with how it's actually illogical despite supposing its logicity, that would be an internal critique. It's very difficult to do an internal critique in this way on this prompt because it's a fact-based prompt. There's no ought here, right? It's not ought political party loyalty be logical. It's is political party loyalty illogical. And so running an internal critique at a fact-based prompt is very hard because there's no moral ought here to critique. So he is running what I would call like a resolutionary prompt or a framework critique, which is the prompt itself is wrong. But it's tough for him because he's on the affirmative. So he's defending the prompt, which is hard to do.
I don't see any real pros from it.
Okay. Well, Vic, over to you. What are the pros and cons of a two-party system with political allegiance in your mind?
Well, yeah, Sam, I think I listed off the pros. In terms of cons, I would say that, yeah, it could lead to, while it's supposed to make it easier for voters, because voters individually don't have enough time to properly research every single policy a candidate might have or what have you. So just having a party simplifies things. However, sometimes it could lead to oversimplification where now you just have people who, who don't want to think at all. And they just want to see, okay, well, do they have a D next to their name? Well, that's my party. I'm just going to vote for them. Or R next to their name. I'm just going to vote for them. So it can lead to oversimplification in those cases. I guess, yeah, super PACs and stuff can be, bad too. Yeah, I think just sometimes people could take it to the extremes of B2 team sports about it.
Okay, so I'm going to reverse the order now, and I'm going to go back to Joe because I think this question makes more sense to start with him. You guys were talking a lot about like 4-year term limits, which made it seemed like you were talking about the presidency when you were talking about political parties primarily. But political parties also feature in down ticket votes for the Senate, for the House, but also in state elections where you're voting for your mayor, your governor, your local city council, your dog catcher. Joe, how would your system of individualism work in a down ticket scenario where you're talking about like a much less high profile or more local office?
You mean like kind of what would the alternative to the two-party system be? Like, what would that look like?
Yeah.
So here's where my one critique of Ryan's moderating would be. I think Ryan has realized at this point, I'm not sure, he can correct me if I'm wrong later on, is that he's realized that we're not actually debating the prompt anymore that much. We're debating critiques on the two-party system. So now he's trying to push and see where people actually stand on the critique of the two-party system, i.e., like, what's your idea of individualism, Joe, about what the alternative to the two-party system is? Because we already gone down this road far enough. It seems like that's where we're going anyway. So let's try to hash this out so we can have a more cogent debate going forward, I would say.
It sounds to me like you were proposing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, an alternative writ large, meaning not just for the president, but for all the elections down to, who's on city council. And in that case, how would an election work for, like, let's say, city council with no political parties?
I mean, you just kind of have to be it. I think what this does is it forces the candidates to be more rigorous and a lot more clear of presenting their platform, right? I think that you have to use the most logical, most moral base for your policy preferences. And I think I would trust that amongst the majority of people more than just asking them to turn their brain off and vote for whoever's got, a D or an R.
Okay. Vic, over to you. How do you think it would work if we didn't have parties and we were doing down ticket elections?
I agree with Joe. It probably would force, ideally, it would force people to, well, okay, in terms of the voters, like, it would force people to maybe do more research, like, ideally. And I guess it would force politicians, in order to really clarify what they stand for and what they're about, and maybe put, I think it would definitely probably force maybe to kind of articulate more who they are, and the voters would probably have to do more research. That's ideally. I'm not sure how well that would go, though, because a lot of voters don't have time to do that stuff. So I think
But again, like, these are both arguments for why political party loyalty might be bad, or why political parties themselves might be bad. But it doesn't even touch on why people's loyalty to a political party is logical or illogical. That's kind of the issue we're trying to grapple with right now.
would probably work the same way as Joe said.
Okay, lightning round. Vic, oftentimes we have additional parties who try to throw their hat into the ring, and oftentimes it doesn't work. Is that a flaw in the two-party system?
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it's a flaw. I think, while I don't mind the two-party system, I think there should be some kind of pathway for a third party to emerge. And it doesn't seem like there really is that way. It's like third parties is kind of throwing away your vote pretty much. So I think there should be some sort of pathway to that.
Over to you, Joe.
I mean, maybe a good argument here on the on Joe's side might have been from the get-go. I'm just spitballing here, is that people are loyal fundamentally to the Libertarian Party. Voting for the Libertarian Party will never get anything accomplished. Therefore, in at least one instance, that political party loyalty is fundamentally illogical. There is no benefit to voting for a Libertarian candidate ever. So if we're talking about whether or not your political party loyalty to Libertarians is logical or illogical, you can make a strong case that that's completely illogical, or Green Party or Communist Party or whatever party, right? And so bringing it back to the two parties kind of makes, and limiting it to only the two parties, kind of makes Joe's argument a little bit more difficult than maybe it could have had to be.
So what do you think?
I think it's a perfect highlight of my argument. It just highlights how the two parties have a stranglehold on the system itself.
Right, but given the fact they have a stranglehold on the system, which everybody has agreed to here, is it logical or illogical to put your allegiance behind one of them, knowing that no other parties could win? That's the question.
Well, all right, gentlemen, that is the end of the moderator-guided question section, the Crossfire. Thank you so much for your answers. I hope that this was illuminating for your positions and maybe some hypos for you to play with. Because this is Word War, we're not done. We've got another 15-minute open debate. So take what you learned about yourself, about your position, about your opponent, and get ready for the next round. But before we do that, we have another word from our sponsors.
Well, we don't here have a word from our sponsors. We are unsponsored. All right. Oh, maybe too far. All right, here we go.
Gang, we are back for the final open debate section, putting another 15 minutes on the clock, and these two debaters are going to go at each other one more time before they give their closing remarks. So, gentlemen, I'm going to put 15 minutes on the clock. As before, I'll give you a 5-minute and 1-minute warning. Debaters, go at it.
Yeah, so Vic, it kind of sounds to me like you agree with my position a lot more than I first thought.
Well, I acknowledge my position isn't that the two-party system is perfect. I'm not saying there's no flaws. It's absolutely perfect. There's definitely flaws. I just think that we could work on fixing those flaws perhaps. And even if there was no way, again, I just think it's inevitable. I think we're going to have two parties no matter what. Even if we were to abolish both parties right now, in, I don't know, however so long, they're just going to emerge again under different names or different leaders or what have you. It's just, we're going to end up with the same thing.
Well, again, like, it's not about what we do pragmatically in reality, right? It's kind of just the like top-down view of the system as it is. It's kind of, it's irrelevant of like.
This is Joe's best argument for sure, is that it doesn't matter pragmatically what we do, which has been Vixen's argument the entire time. Is like, well, it is the way it is, and people have a shortcut because they vote R&D, so it makes it easier for them because it's too tough for people to do research. And so Joe's argument here is on point. Like, that doesn't really matter to the prompt.
Like, how we change the system, right? Like, that's not the debate. The debate isn't how we switch to, you know, how do we make it so that everybody just votes for individuals or that everyone becomes independent, right? It's just acknowledging that the system as it exists today is indeed flawed, and perhaps there could be a better system, which I think there could be. I think there's a better choice.
But Joe's argument doesn't go quite far enough there. Joe's argument, in order to, if we're talking about the prompt now, which we haven't been for the last 45 minutes or so, or like 35 minutes of the debate, is it logical to have a party loyalty or not in the current system or in any system, hypothetically, right? So we can all agree the system is flawed, and Vic's pragmatic consequentialist argument that's saying, well, it is this way for certain reasons, so we should let it go, doesn't touch the prompt. The problem is with Joe's argument here is that it doesn't de facto make it illogical. The fact that the system is broken doesn't mean that people don't have a logical reason for supporting a party.
Social attitude, right? Like, we didn't always vote for two parties, like we alluded to earlier. The history of the country is not only two parties. It wouldn't be illogical that it couldn't be that way again, and it wouldn't be illogical to believe that we couldn't just vote for the individuals who, like earlier, like you kind of admitted, it would cause both the populace and the candidates to be more rigorous about policy, about where they stand on principle, about where they stand on morality, right? These things are universal concepts, I believe, speak to the most of us through reason. And I think for some voters to be disenfranchised by that is fine. I think too many people vote. I think too people who are incapable of understanding how our system works or what the entailments of policies are. I think for them to say, oh man, you mean I got to study what the outcomes of my policy preferences would be before I vote on anybody? I'm just going to take, I'm just not going to participate. That's good for me.
But again, now you're making the same kind of consequentialist argument that Vic is, that like somehow not having a two-party political system is better because it will not encourage idiots to vote. Has nothing to do whether it's logical or illogical for somebody to be loyal to a political party. We're like missing the mark left and right.
Fine with the more educated populace voting on people.
Yeah, but like I said, ideally, that's what we think would happen or want to happen, but I just don't think realistically it would. I think realistically people are going to be looking for, like, hey, which party in general aligns more with my values, and I'm going to go with that.
I understand that, but what if they didn't have that? What if they had what I had in place instead? Like, what if they just had individual candidates who just all ran on what they thought were the best ideas for?
Well, then there'd be no political parties, and then political party loyalty, illogical or logical, would not be a thing.
To fit the country or their area or wherever they're running for at the time.
Well, you're going to have that anyway. Like under, if it's just two individuals, you're going to get that anyway. Instead, now you're just going to be asking people to do more work.
Well, no, we narrow it down, right? We narrow it down from like a primary process where there's more than two, and we whittle it down to two. I'm just saying we start off with individuals who don't necessarily have a party platform. They just have a voice and some ideas, and the people research these candidates and they vote based on the ideas from those candidates. I think for the candidates to be more rigorous about putting out their message and for the populace to be more rigorous about studying their candidate positions, I think we get a more informed voter populace and better candidate outcome that actually matches what the people want, doesn't betray.
Sure. So if you get rid of political parties, there is going to be de facto a more educated populace and a more educated voter base, and then a more informed voter outcome. Sure. But that doesn't have anything to do with the fundamental question of whether or not political party loyalty is logical or illogical. That's a pragmatic answer. That's a policy-based outcome.
What we want.
Well, okay. Well, now if you're going to individuals and you want the match what the people want, now you're going to have 8 individuals running in primaries, and it's just going to be a complete diluted mess. And you're still going to end up voting for someone that you mostly align with, because you're not going to agree with everybody 100% completely. You're still going to be going with someone, okay, I'm mostly aligned. Like before our time ran up earlier, I brought up, let's say you have 2 independents, right? One is like, I'm going to eliminate immigration. I'm going to, not allow the social media companies to censor. I'm going to do all this stuff, right? But I'm still going to support Israel. Then you have another candidate who's like, yeah, listen, I'm going to heavily censor people. I'm going to allow millions of immigrants back in, but I'm not going to work with Israel. You're still going to have to choose one that aligns most with yours.
Right, but that's not how our system currently works. We don't just cut to 2 people, right? We narrow it down to 2.
But that doesn't really
so it's
matter.
like, we're going to, I think in a wider field, like let's say you start off with 8 people, I don't think it's going to whittle down to, you know, these two flawed choices as much as it would definitely with it's a given. It's something that naturally comes with the two-party system, as you kind of admitted to earlier.
Yeah, but it's still going to dilute it a lot if you have, you know, let's say if you have 8 candidates, right, fighting for the.
I'm fine with the cream rising to the top. You know, somebody's going to rise to the top, even in that system.
But I think it's going to make it less likely that someone's going to rise to the top that's going to reflect your values, though.
Why not? Why, if they just are putting out their best values, right? The candidate is trying to engage with what the people actually want, what they're actually suffering or dealing with, right? They actually have their hand on the pulse of the populace, and that's what's going to get them favorability. Speaking to the populace, right? Not just speaking to the party, because that's what they do now. They speak to the party and they let the party, you know, do the rest. It's just, you just toe the party line.
Yeah, but then you're going to have 8 people who, and again, if we're all saying things that are good, it's like they might all end up saying this, like similar things anyway, and then they might vary on 1 or 2 or 3 issues, and then it's pretty much like you might just end up getting the same thing anyway.
I don't think so. I think we're going to get what the people.
But the point is, whether or not you get the same thing or a different thing doesn't matter to whether or not political party loyalty is logical or illogical. The consequentialist ends-based argument here is irrelevant, and they've both been sucked into a vortex of arguing outcomes for the last 3/4 of the debate.
Actually want in an individual, because you hold the individual responsible. In this case, you can't really hold the individual as responsible. You got to hold the party responsible, and the party is made up of a bunch of people. So your criticism never lands on anybody really, because it's this big amorphous like glob that we call a party, right? You can't narrow down responsibility to a single person.
Well, you can. You still hold the person responsible. Like you could still do that. Like you could still, you know, for instance, there's people who are Democrats who are like, you know, Joe Biden, he was horrible or whatever. Like you could still hold the candidate responsible.
That's a flaw in the party,
you can still have all that.
That's a flaw with the party. It's like you voted for the party instead of the person, and now you got this flawed candidate.
Right. But that doesn't mean that the flawed candidate does not still align with your values more than 50%. So it still would not be illogical for you to support the party, even though you're getting shafted 40% of the time, even. Like, I don't get that argument.
I'm just saying that the candidates, they still have to work for your vote. Otherwise, there would be no campaigning at all. It would just be like, okay, here's this guy, he's a Democrat. Oh, here's this person, he's a Republican. Have at it.
They don't work for your vote.
Campaign and work for your votes regardless.
If I am an independent, they don't necessarily work for my vote. They work for the party's vote. If you're registered to the party, they're going to squawk the right words that get you to vote for that party, right?
Yeah, but again, you can still get that on individuals, though. They could still just tell people what they want to hear.
No, you get individuals without the individuality. The flaw with the two-party system is they leave some of their individuality at the door when they're making the choice, when they're casting their vote. They're obviously making compromises, as you admitted earlier. You go in there knowing you're going to make compromises on things to vote for something you don't.
Right, but I think the argument that could have been made here, or should have been made here, maybe is a compromise de facto illogical? I think when anybody makes a compromise, at least most folks, we could say, they make a compromise based upon a logical premise. I'm compromising, I'm getting less of something and more of the other thing. The other thing is either which I prefer, or the thing I don't prefer as much, I'm getting less of, or otherwise I'm getting way more of the good thing and way less of the bad thing. So the compromise is logical for me as much as I accept it. Now, if I'm voting for some reason upside down, I'm choosing the thing that is worse for me, even though I know it's worse for me. That would be illogical, but that hasn't been shown here on either side.
Completely want you maybe want 80% of it at best sometimes, and that's flawed because you have no choice. The two-party system doesn't allow you true choice.
Okay, Halvage, how is it illogical? Like as a matter of logic, how is that illogical?
But you're still going to have tribalism by nature, no matter what. Okay, let's say you have the candidates, right? 8 candidates, and then they're all individuals, and then we whittle it down to 2. And the 2 candidates are, one's a Christian, one's a Muslim.
Yeah.
Well, which one are you voting for?
Well, look. We're both kind of
like, it can suck and it can be bad and not ideal, but how is it illogical?
Christians, right? I'd hate to weaponize this against you, but the thing is that Christianity is the basis for kind of morality, for reason itself. We both share the same views on that. I think that if somebody just uses those values and that moral logic, that speaks to more people inherently. If you believe God made us all, then whoever wields the best arguments from God, I think, is going to speak to the most amount of people. Even if there's atheists out there, the atheists, as you know, still believe in morality. They just don't want to give themselves a source for it, right? So you just have to use moral reasoning, and if it comes from Christianity, you could give it kind of like not an atheist mask, but like a secular mask, and it could still be basically Christian morality. And I think that speaks to the largest amount of people. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about the best Christian philosopher who's also versed in public policy being able to get the most votes in an individual system.
Yeah, right. I was just pointing out that people, even as individuals, since we're all tribalistic by nature, if they don't have political parties, they're going to appeal to something else. And in this case, they might appeal to religion. They might appeal to race.
Whether or not they appeal to anything doesn't matter. Whether or not one's loyalty to a currently existing or futurely existing political party is illogical or logical. Like the outcome determinative thing here is not really even relevant to the prompt.
They might appeal to gender if it's a man and a woman. They might appeal to.
I think Christianity is the best tribe, and if they want to get tribal, if we get a candidate,
so then political loyalty to Christianity is always logical. That's an internal critique that Nick could run here. He doesn't, but he could.
Who could best summon those kind of tribal tendencies from the religious aspect? I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And being fine with it and it being logical are two separate things.
All right, I agree with you on that. Right. I'm just saying that
we can't have that in the current system. We can't truly have a Christian person, who follows everything Christian in the modern two-party system. You have to compromise on some of your Christianity if you're going to be a Republican. You kind of know that. There's no reason for me as a Christian to ever support anything having to do with Zionism. But yet, if I want...
Oh, well, sure. So, but I get what you're saying, Vidge. But the point being is that... So let's say we have liberals versus fascists, okay? And if I am a liberal... and I agree with the liberal party. So say we have the liberal party and the fascist party, okay? If I agree and align with the liberal party, then me voting for the liberal party and me align with it because it aligns with my ideals, right, will be logical. Same way if I'm a fascist and I align with the fascist party, me having my ideals align with that fascist party would still be logical. It's not good. The outcomes might be terrible or horrible. The system is horrible, but it's still not illogical. Like it still is actually logical to align with a political party if you are sharing a majority of ideas with that party. Am I missing your argument? I think I'm reading it right.
To vote against abortion, I have to vote for Zionism.
Well, then in that case, you're just going to it just all comes down to what matters to you more. Does Zionism really... Yeah, but you're going to get that no matter what.
Okay. I don't think the party's to compromise, but I think that was misspoke by one of the debaters here. I think what they mean is like, in order to vote for, okay, so say you're anti-fascist, not like the colloquial term, but like say that you're on the liberal party. There's a liberal party, fascist party, and you're going to vote for the liberal party. Well, maybe you don't agree with 30% of what the liberal party is saying, right? But you disagree with 90% of what the fascist party is saying. In order to logically align your allegiance with the liberal party, you're going to have to compromise on your own personal political views, 30%, in order to not vote for the fascists. I think that's what they're going for. Yeah, for the parties to compromise together is illogical, but I don't think that was ever mentioned here.
Is my point. Like if you have two individuals, you're not going to agree with both of them 100%. Like I said earlier with the example, you can have everyone that says, you got one that says most of the right things, but they're like, yeah, but I'm still going to support Israel. And then someone who says, I support all the wrong things. However, no more Israel. We're done with Israel. Then it all comes down to how much does the Zionism matter to you?
That's where you're going to pick. You're assuming that those are the two choices left after like 10 people get whittled down. And I don't see any logical reason.
But to say that, okay, whether or not the process is logical, Joe, doesn't really matter. The point is, if you have one person that represents one pro-Zionist party and one person that represents an anti-Zionist party, and you vote for whichever your personal proclivity is towards Zionism or anti-Zionism, that's still logical for you. The process sucks, and you don't think the process is the best process, does not de facto make it illogical.
I believe that. I know it's a hypothetical.
Well, it's a hypothetical, though.
Right. It's a hypothetical. And sure, like I guess, but I mean, I don't see... I would only see that happening if that's truly what the people wanted. Right. And if it's representative, if it's truly representative, I have no problem with that either. I just don't think it's truly representative right now. I believe whether you vote for Republican or Democrat, you're compromising.
Yes, you are compromising inherently, but it can still be a logical compromise.
Well, then again, it just all comes down to, like, if this is all about like Zionism, then it all just comes down to how much does Zionism really...
Not purely. That's just one example, right? There's other special interest groups, right? There's megacorps. There's data centers is another big one people are fighting about.
We got 2 minutes left, Jen. Sorry, I forgot that.
But these are issues, not These are consequential issues, not dealing with the party itself.
Give you the warning.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no worries.
No, I mean, it's not only like people want to get their hands in there and influence the parties over foreign policy. It's also big business or corporations or even like foreign corporations like China, right? Like if you allow them to set up shop here, what are you doing? How is that in our interest, right? Like I said, these are problems that are embedded in both sides. And that's why I think in order to take power away from this dynamic, more people have to think for themselves. And that involves becoming an independent, because now the parties actually have to put forth somebody who represents the majority and not just half the country.
I guess we have to go into then like what makes an independent though, because no one, I believe there's no one that's truly independent. I think you either lean one side or the other. So what is an independent then?
An independent is someone who uses, I think you just have to use logic, reason, morality. You just have to use these types of things best to analyze the reality of the situation. What do we need as far as policy? What are people looking for? What are their complaints? Like we look at them objectively, right? And we use the best reason, not the best, like the best group think, which is what we have currently. We just have a group think prescribed prescription from each side, right? You just got to pick a package deal. And that's not the same. I think that individuals come up with more diverse, it's much more possible that out of 10 people, I could choose one person that represents my views better than the two parties ever could.
Gentlemen, we are running up on time, and I appreciate your thoughts. It goes fast. I know it goes very, very fast.
Yeah.
So debaters, well done on your debate and 2 competitive rounds. We're going to go to closing statements in a moment, but I want to remind the viewers that you, the viewers, are going to get to vote on who won this debate.
You can't vote anymore. The voting is closed. The winner has yet to be announced, I think, but the voting has closed.
Debate. So as we move into the 5-minute closing statements, think about what was said, who said it, who convinced you, and why. And keep that in your mind as you listen to their final closing statements and you decide how to cast your vote and decide who moves on to the next round. Ultimately, it's up to you. So, Joe, because you have the affirmative, you're going to get your 5-minute closing first. And Vic, you'll have 5 minutes to respond. And before we do that, we're just going to have a brief word from our sponsors, and then we will come back with our closing statement.
No word from my sponsors. I don't have any. All right.
And we're back. We're back from our brief word from our sponsors. Joe, you have the affirmative, so the first closing statement is yours. I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock, and I'll start when you start talking. As always, I'll give you a 1-minute warning.
Thanks again, Ryan, for being the moderator. This went very well, I think. And thank you to Vic for having the spirited debate with me today. Look, I like Vic. I'm a fan of his work, and it is his work that I review that kind of highlights a lot of the problems that I talked about today. He highlights the hypocrisies from the left. He highlights how it's this brain dead kind of zombie thing to do to just vote blue no matter who, right? And that is a flaw that is embedded within our system. Sure, it's on the side he doesn't like, but on the other hand, you see Vic, he's done reviews on people who are supposedly on his side that he disagrees with, like this MAGA chick that he was reviewing, talking with Myron Gaines. According to party allegiance, her and Vic are on the same side, but yet, Vic can point out, obviously, there are people on supposedly his side that he doesn't.
But that kind of just proves your point. Like, it's still logical for them to align in a party, even though they disagree on individual issues.
Agree with. And I think, that just kind of highlights more why this is, why even he agrees with me. I think it was unfortunate that Vic fell on that side of the debate. But I do give him credit for being honest. He's not going to die on the hill of this particular debate to go against his own moral principles. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate, the small concessions that he made here and there on the flaws that are inherently in the two-party system.
Sure.
With that, I think we rightfully pointed out, I think both of us kind of recognize that there are flaws in the very logic of this system itself. And with that, I think I'm just satisfied the way it went, and I enjoyed the debate.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Vic, because you have the negative, we're going to end with you. And as always, you have 5 minutes to use or not use as you see fit. And I'll give you a 1-minute warning when you are approaching the end of your time. The timer starts when you do.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much to Joe for having this conversation with me. Well, it's a debate, but what I liked about it was, when I debated people on the left before, you're always worried about getting into gotchas or being clipped. What I liked about this debate, that this was a good faith debate. I like Joe, and Joe wasn't in it for the gotchas. He was in it for the conversation and just the pure debate. And I appreciate that. So thank you very much, Joe. With that being said, though, obviously I do disagree, and it's not because I don't acknowledge that there are flaws in the two-party system. There definitely are flaws, and I acknowledge that. It's not a perfect system by any means. I just think that even if we were to eliminate it completely, I think we're going to fall into the same things regardless. Either people are going to start being tribalistic about other things, other qualities, maybe religion, maybe gender, sexuality, race, what have you. People are going to start being tribalistic about other things. Even if we do just keep it to issues, I think we're still going to fall into this thing where we're going to end up with two parties anyway, because there's only so many issues that we could differ on. And I think most people align on one side or the other on things. They just might have differing things here and there. So Joe brought up how I disagree with people on my side, and that is absolutely true. And I actually think that's further testament that you don't have to be just because you are tribalistic and you do have a side, that doesn't mean you have to agree with every person on your side anyway. It goes to show that you can still have disagreements within your own party, or maybe not even support the candidate, but you know, and you're just not extremely tribalistic about it. You can still have differences of opinion, even if you align with one party or the other. I think that's about it. Thank you very much to Ryan for moderating this debate. I appreciate it. Also, thank you very much, Word War Debates, for hosting.
All right. I think that's where she ends. Does anyone want to come talk about what they saw, what they didn't see, anything else? There's the link right there. You're welcome aboard. We'll give a couple minutes for people to pop in if they want to comment and say their piece. If not, I'll give my closing remarks and we'll call it a night. So again, like I said before, I'll just start. If somebody wants to pop on, just click the link. I'll bring you up. I watched this debate twice before, and until I started actually commenting on it out loud, I didn't quite realize how far afield from the prompt it went, and that everybody's arguments ultimately somehow ended up devolving into critiques of the two-party system. I think that ultimately, whether or not there is a two-party system or a no-party system or any alternative was nobody's burden to prove. And so you can have problems with a two-party system all day, and that doesn't mean that's illogical for any individual to align themselves with one of the parties that exists. And again, it didn't say, the prompt did not say, not that anybody bothered to define it, it didn't say, is political party loyalty illogical in a two-party system? It says, is political party loyalty illogical in general? And so whether you break it down to a multi-party system, like a parliamentary system, or keep it the way it is, I don't think that was ever adequately addressed by either side. I think in this debate, the arguments Vic ran a very pragmatic-based consequentialist arguments system, saying that, well, it's going to revert back to this anyway. Well, they'll have bad outcomes, good outcomes. And then half the debate was spent talking about Trump and Israel donors. And I don't think that actually got back to the prompt. Ryan tried very well to bring it back as a moderator, and he could never quite get back to actually addressing the prompt. So, yeah, I think we can all agree that the two-party system is flawed, has issues. I think the question that was never actually adequately asked or answered in the debate, and no offense to debaters, they both did a great job. It is what it is. You got to roll with the punches. You got to do what you got to do. You got to respond to what's on the field. But I think that the ultimate question that was never adequately answered is, given the system you're in, or given any hypothetical system you want, 7 parties, 30 parties, whatever, is any one person's loyalty to any one of those 30 parties or 40 parties illogical or logical based upon how much that party aligns with their values? And so I think that's kind of where we have to leave it off here. And it's too bad, I think, as far as the way that the clash went in the debate, that we started talking about whether or not the two-party system is good or bad, because I think both the debaters agreed it's shit. But that doesn't really hit the prompt. And I think that's where things kind of fell off, despite some good moderation. So I'm going to give a couple last seconds for people to hop on if anybody wants to share their thoughts about the debate, about the two-party system, about politics in general, about anything at all. Feel free to hop on. I'll pull you up. If not, I'll bid you a fond farewell very shortly, folks. And thank you for coming in. I'm going to set up a couple more of the reviews of World War Debate stuff. I think I'm going to do Owlish's tomorrow, and then one other I have yet to select. And we'll go from there. We'll keep these going probably twice a day for the next few days. So no takers on the coming up to talk about stuff. That's just fine. I want you all to have a blessed evening. Take good care and keep thinking about debate. Keep thinking about how to make your debate better. Keep thinking how to make your arguments more salient, more cogent, and how to relate them back to the prompt. And always remember, folks, always remember to define your terms. God bless and good night. Oh, wait. Oh, well, that's fine. I'm glad you're still here, Evelyn. Unless you wanted to come up, it didn't really matter. You're good, brother. I appreciate you all. Y'all have a great one. God bless.